Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. And happy April. Yes, today is April the 1st. It is the most amazing month of the year because, of course, it is my birthday year. So, yeah, I'm a little bit biased. I mean, my birthday month, sorry. So, yeah, it's April 1st, and we are starting off with some read along. Tomorrow on the other channel, we will have pre-pub chit chat, so no worries. The gang will join me then. But yeah, today we're going to continue to read The Blue Castle. And yeah, let's see what happens with Valancy. Now, before we get into the reading part, though, I'm just going to say hello to the folks over on the live chat. Red Tempest unfortunately can't make it, so he'll have to catch the rewatch. Unfortunately, he won't be able to tell us some more about his childhood shenanigans stories. Again, when you guys were sharing your stories from your shenanigan days, I was like, man, I should have really lived it up a little. Now I'm just, because we're all gonna play it safe when we're adults at some point. But I was like, man, I played it safe too early. But you know what? How about we take a page from Valancy's book, and even if we're like 29, let's just go crazy, you guys. let's make that our new April resolution. Let's go crazy. And do some shenanigans. Now, Valancy, though, if you guys remember, she there's absolutely nothing unhinged or wild about her. She basically lives a commonplace life with commonplace people. It's not a bad life. I mean, she doesn't live out in the streets. She has her family, but it's definitely stifling, and she could use a little bit more excitement and less family criticism, and she's just afraid. So yeah, so basically the book starts us off with Valancy being it starts off in the morning. She wakes up, it's her 29th birthday, but of course people have forgotten it because it's always overshadowed by some family event, which is just as well, because who wants to be reminded that they're getting older and they've never had a boyfriend and they're never gonna get married? This is our girl's problem. She lives with her mother and a cousin, or a cousin Stickles, and they're doing life, but they just pester at her. Don't let her really take some ownership of her life. Or maybe she just hasn't, braved up to take ownership of her life, whether her family members let her or not. Also, she does tell us about, she has a health ailment. It's not really an ailment, but she kind of has her chest hurts every once in a while. She gets these strange attacks. So I don't know. Wonder what that's all about. We'll see. So anyway, before I get ahead of myself, let me just finish saying hello to the peeps on the chat. Plamen says hello, another early day for some reading. Plamen, darling, I know you're Europe gang. Thank you so much for joining me at this early hour. I hope you enjoyed, and if you fall asleep, that's okay. This magpie will lull you into sleep with my voice as best as I can. Hope you have sweet dreams if you do fall asleep. But if not, enjoy it, and as you work or do whatever you do this late hour. And finally, we have Arcady Durrell. Hello, greetings. Happy to see you here. I hope you enjoy the live read of The Blue Castle. So, yes. So yeah, thank you guys for saying hello, early gang. There's a few of us here already. So let me see, what else can we catch up on while we wait to see if there's other people who need to get the notification. So Easter was yesterday. For those of you who celebrated it, what did you do? Over on my side of the world, it rained incessantly. It rained and rained and rained. So I felt really sorry for all the little kitties who, oh, usually when it's Easter, kids go out, egg hunting and all these things. So unfortunately that got ruined. However, I did as I usually do on a Sunday. I relaxed at home. I curled up with a book and then did some chores and some cooking and then went back to curl up with something good. Yeah, it was blissful. It was really heavenly. I should have worked a little bit, but that's what I'll just gonna have to make up for it later tonight when I go to sleep really, really late after finishing my catch up. But anyway, that's a holiday. And yeah, what else do we have to say? Oh, I fell behind on the Ferdinand ABCs over on my ex, formerly known as Twitter. But I will make up for it. I think the last time I updated it was letter D on a Friday, so I have E and F to do. For E for Saturday, F for Sunday, and then G for today. Oh my goodness. Okay, I really am falling behind. So do check that one out. Plowman says, in my part of the world, Easter is in a couple of weeks. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, because I think there's different churches that go by a different what's it called? A different calendar. So I imagine that's the case for your church. So, and then Arcady Durrell says, yes, raining also in York. I have just been cooking and reading. Yeah, that's basically the life. I know it's spring, but it really has been raining quite a bit over here as well. So, it's been cold, rainy. I'm just thankful that today the sun is out. And I hope that when my birthday rolls around, it'll be a nice, pleasant day. Yeah. So it is 10:10, around 10:10. It's almost 10. It's almost 10:10. I think we should just get started. I am ready. I do have my throat feels a little scratchy today, but I'll do my best. And I hope you enjoy it. Again, if you haven't read this book, basically we're just getting started. We did 3 chapters today. I hope to do another 3 chapters, and I'll try to schedule them more often. That way we don't lose the thread of the narrative. Yes, fingers crossed, Katie. All right, so let's read this. The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery, and we are reading chapter 4 today. Let me just change the screen for you guys so you can follow along. There we go. Ow, ow, ow. Sorry, I hit myself here. Got your rubber, son? Called Cousin Stickles as Valancy left the house. Christine Stickles had never once forgotten to ask that question when Valancy went out on a damp day. Yes. Have you got your flannel petticoat on? Asked Mrs. Frederick. No. Thus, I really do not understand you. Do you want to catch your death of cold again? Her voice implied that Valancy had died of a cold several times already. Go upstairs this minute and put it on. Mother, I don't need a flannel petticoat. My sateen one is warm enough. Thus, remember you had bronchitis 2 years ago. Go and do as you are told. Valancy went, though nobody will ever know just how near she came to hurling the rubber plant into the street before she went. She hated that gray flannel petticoat more than any other garment she owned. Olive never had to wear flannel petticoats. Olive wore ruffled silk and sheer lawn and filmy laced flounces. But Olive's father had married money, and Olive never had bronchitis, so there you were. Are you sure you didn't leave the soap in the water? Demanded Mrs. Frederick. But Valancy was gone. She turned at the corner and looked back down the ugly, prim, respectable street where she lived. The Stirling house was the ugliest on it, more like a red brick box than anything else. Too high for its breadth, and made still higher by a bulbous glass cupola on top. About it was the desolate, barren piece of an old house whose life is lived. There was a very pretty little house, with leaded casements and dubbed gables, just around the corner. A new house, one of those houses you love the minute you see them. Clayton Markley had built it for his bride. He was to be married to Jenny Lloyd in June. The little house, it was said, was furnished from attic to cellar in complete readiness for its mistress. I don't envy Jenny the man, thought Valancy sincerely. Clayton Markley was not one of her many ideals. But I do envy her the house. It's such a nice young house. Oh, if I could only have a house of my own. Ever so poor, so tiny, but my own. But then, there is no use in yowling for the moon when you can't even get a tallow candle. In dreamland, nothing would do Valancy but a castle of pale sapphire. In real life, she would have been fully satisfied with a house. She would have been fully satisfied with a little house of her own. She envied Jenny Floyd more fiercely than ever today. Jenny was not so much better looking than she was, and not so very much younger. Yet she was to have this delightful house, and the nicest little Wedgwood teacups. Valancy had seen them. An open fireplace and monogram linen, hem-stitched tablecloths and china closets. Why did everything come to some girls and nothing to others? It wasn't fair. Valancy was once more seething with rebellion as she walked along, a prim, dowdy little figure in her shabby raincoat and 3-year-old hat, splashed occasionally by the mud of a passing motor with its insulting shrieks. Motors were still rather a novelty in Deerwood, though they were common in Port Lawrence, and most of the summer residents up at Muskoka had them. In Deerwood, only some of the smart set had them, for even Deerwood was divided into sets. There was the smart set, the intellectual set, the old family set, of which the Stirlings were members, the common run, and a few pariahs. Not one of the Stirling clan had as yet condescended to a motor, though Olive was teasing her father to have one. Valancy had never even been in a motor car, but she did not hanker after this. In truth, she felt rather afraid of motor cars, especially at night. They seemed to be too much like big, purring beasts that might turn and crush you, or make some terrible savage leap somewhere. On the steep mountain trails around her blue castle, only gaily caparisoned steeds might proudly pace. In real life, Valancy would have been quite contented to drive in a buggy behind a nice horse. She got a buggy drive only when some uncle or cousin remembered to fling her a chance, like a bone, to a dog. Oh, that was a short chapter. End of chapter. Arcadia says she's hurting herself thinking about that house. I know, right? Honestly, like, as somebody who can't afford my own house, like we live in a society, you guys. I also would be so happy with even just like a tiny house. Like, yeah, a tiny house. I would be happy in a tiny house, a tiny condo, just somewhere that's just my own, where I can build equity. I feel her rebellion to my very soul. But, that's just because I want a house. But no, just for her, the whole idea of having a place of her own, a place where she can, make her own decisions and be at peace. And all the charming little things in there. Yeah, she's really hurting herself. But girl, you gotta do what you need to do to get your things, Valancy. I don't know how you're gonna accomplish it in this book, but I don't know. All right, let's continue with chapter 5. Let me just see one thing. What's the most challenging thing about reading this, you guys? It's the voices. And I try to keep notes to see how I'm going to make how I made the voices last time so I can keep them straight. I know, it's super professional of me to point this out, right? All right. Okay, let's just have fun. Yeah, Arcady says, yeah, same. I also want a house, but that's just a dream. I know, right? What happened to the American dream? At least, or just not even the American dream because you're not in America, you're in York, but I don't know, the equivalent of the dream over in your side of the world. I don't know. We'll just have to hope for the best and yeah, hopefully one day our dreams will come true. All right, chapter 5. Of course, she must buy the tea in Uncle Benjamin's grocery store. To buy it anywhere else was unthinkable. Yet Valancy hated to go to Uncle Benjamin's store on her 29th birthday. There was no hope that he would not remember it. Why? Demanded Uncle Benjamin leeringly as he tied up her tea. Why are young ladies like bad grammarians? Valancy, with Uncle Benjamin's will in the background of her mind, said meekly, I don't know. Why? Because they can't decline matrimony. The two clerks, Joe Hammond and Claude Bertram, chuckled also, and Valancy disliked them a little more than ever. On the first day, Claude Bertram had seen her in the store. She had heard him whisper to Joe, Hey, who's that? And Joe had said, Valancy Stirling, one of the Deerwood old maids. Curable or incurable? Claude had asked with a snicker, evidently thinking the very question was very clever. No, evidently thinking the question was very clever. Valancy smarted anew with the sting of that old recollection. 29, Uncle Benjamin was saying. Dear me, Doss, you're dangerously near the second corner and not even thinking of getting married yet. 29 seems impossible. Then Uncle Benjamin said an original thing. Uncle Benjamin said, How time does fly. I think it crawls, said Valancy passionately. Passion was so alien to Uncle Benjamin's conception of Valancy that he didn't know what to make of her. To cover his confusion, he asked another conundrum as he tied up her beans. Cousin Stickles had remembered at the last moment that they must have beans. Beans were cheap and filling. What two ages are apt to prove illusory? Asked Uncle Benjamin, and not waiting for Valancy to give it up, he added, Mirage and marriage. M-I-R-A-G-E is pronounced mirage, said Valancy shortly, picking up her tea and her beans. For the moment, she did not care whether Uncle Benjamin cut her out of his will or not. She walked out of the store while Uncle Benjamin stared after her with his mouth open. Then he shook his head. Poor Doss is taking it hard. Valancy was sorry by the time she reached the next crossing. Why had she lost her patience like that? Uncle Benjamin would be annoyed and would likely tell her mother that Doss had been impertinent to me, and her mother would lecture her for a week. I've held my tongue for 20 years, thought Valancy. Why couldn't I have held it once more? Yes, it was just 20, Valancy reflected, since she had first been twitted with her loverless condition. She remembered the bitter moment perfectly. She was just 9 years old, and she was standing alone on the school playground, while the other little girls of her class were playing a game in which you must be chosen by a boy as his partner before you could play. Nobody had chosen Valancy, little, pale, black-haired Valancy with her prim, long-sleeved apron and odd slanted eyes. Oh, said a pretty little girl next to her. I'm so sorry for you. You haven't got a bow. Valancy had defiantly said, as she continued to say for 20 years, I don't want a bow. But this afternoon, Valancy once and for all stopped saying that. I'm going to be honest with myself anyhow. Uncle Benjamin's riddles hurt me because they are true. I do want to be married. I want a house of my own. I want a husband of my own. I want sweet little fat babies of my own. Valancy stopped suddenly, though, against. Oh, wait. Valancy stopped suddenly, aghast at her own recklessness. She felt sure oh, that Reverend Stirling, who passed her at this moment, read her thoughts and disapproved of them thoroughly. Valancy was afraid of Dr. Stirling, had been afraid of him ever since the Sunday, 23 years before, when he had first came to St. Alban's. Valancy had been too late for Sunday school that day, and she had gone into the church timidly and sat in her pew. No one else was in the church. Nobody except the new rector, Dr. Stirling. Dr. Stirling stood up in front of the church. No, Dr. Stirling stood up in front of the church. Choir door. Dr. Stirling stood up in front of the choir door, beckoned to her, and said sternly, "Little boy, come up here." Valancy had stared around her. There was no little boy. There was no one in all the huge church but herself. This strange man with the blue glasses couldn't mean her. She was not a boy. "Little boy," repeated Dr. Stirling more sternly still, shaking his forefingers fiercely at her. "Come up here at once." Valancy arose as if hypnotized and walked up the aisle. She was too terrified to do anything else. What dreadful thing was going to happen to her? What had happened to her? Had she actually turned into a boy? She came to a stop in front of Dr. Stirling. Dr. Stirling shook his forefinger, such a long, knuckly forefinger, at her, and said, "Little boy, take off your hat." Valancy took off her hat. She had a scrawny little pigtail hanging down her back, but Dr. Stirling was short-sighted and did not perceive it. "Little boy, now go back to your seat and always take off your hat in church. Remember!" Valancy went back to her seat, carrying her hat like an automaton. Presently, her mother came in. "Doss," said Mrs. Stirling, "what do you mean by taking off your hat? Put it on instantly." Valancy put it on instantly. She was cold with fear lest Dr. Stirling should immediately summon her up front again. She would have to go, of course. It never occurred to her that one could disobey the rector. And the church was full of people now. Oh, what would she do if that horrible stabbing forefinger were shaking at her again before all those people? Valancy sat through the whole service in an agony of dread and was sick for a week afterwards. Nobody knew why. Mrs. Frederick again bemoaned herself of her delicate child. Dr. Stirling found out his mistake and laughed over it to Valancy, who did not laugh. She never got over her dread of Dr. Stirling, and now to be caught by him on the street corner thinking such things. Valancy got her John Foster book, Magic of Wings. "His latest, all about birds," said Mrs. Clarkson. She had almost decided that she would go home instead of going to see Dr. Trent. Her courage had failed her. She was afraid of offending Uncle James, afraid of angering her mother, afraid of facing gruff, shaggy-browed old Dr. Trent, who would probably tell her, as he had told Cousin Gladys, that her trouble was entirely imaginary and that she only had it because she liked to have it. No, she would not go. She would get a bottle of Redfern's purple pills instead. Redfern's purple pills were the standard medicine of the Stirling clan. Had they not cured second cousin Geraldine when 5 doctors had given her up? Valancy always felt very skeptical concerning the virtues of purple pills, but there might be something in them, and it was easier to take them than to face Dr. Trent alone. She would glance over the magazines in the reading room a few minutes and then go home. Valancy tried to read a story, but it made her furious. On every page was a picture of the heroine surrounded by adoring men, and here was she, Valancy Stirling, who could not get a solitary bow. Valancy slammed the magazine shut. She opened Magic of Wings. Her eyes fell on the paragraph that changed her life. Fear is the original sin. Almost all the evil in the world has its origin in the fact that someone is afraid of something. It is a cold, slimy serpent coiling about you. It is horrible to live with it is horrible to live with fear, and it is, of all things, degrading. Valancy shut the magic of wings and stood up. She would go and see Dr. Trent. End of chapter. All right. So we got a little bit more of Valancy being angry now. She's angry and bitter. Poor thing. Yeah, Katie says to be a woman in those times was pure nightmare. Yes, it was. It was a difficult time. A lot of times we take things for granted, what we have, but you know, our grandparents sure had it tough, man. Our grandmothers too. Um, yeah. So it it took courage to survive back in those days. Yes, it's hard time to rise, Arcadia. Let's do this. I like the next coming chapter. So we're finally getting to the stuff where she rebels. So let's do this. Well, I guess I'm spoiling it, but you guys already know. It's in the book blurb that I shared with you guys. Yes, time for Valancy to make her move. Let's see. Chapter 6. The ordeal was not so dreadful after all. Dr. Trent was as gruff and abrupt as usual, but he did not tell her her ailment was imaginary. After he had listened to her symptoms and asked a few questions and made a quick examination, he sat for a moment, looking at her quite intently. Valancy thought he looked as if he were sorry for her. She caught her breath for a moment. Was the trouble serious? Oh, it couldn't be, surely. It hadn't really bothered her much. Only lately it had got a little worse. Dr. Trent opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the telephone at his elbow rang sharply. He picked up the receiver. Valancy, watching him, saw his face change suddenly as he listened. "Hello? Yes? Yes? What? Yes! Yes! My God!" Dr. Trent dropped the receiver, dashed out of the room, and upstairs without even a glance at Valancy. She heard him rushing madly about overhead, barking out a few remarks to somebody, presumably his housekeeper. Then he came tearing downstairs with a club bag in his hand, snatched his hat and coat from the rack, jerked open the street door, and rushed down the street in the direction of the station. Valancy sat alone in the little office, feeling more absolutely foolish than she had ever felt before in her life. Foolish and humiliated. So, this was all that had come of her heroic determination to live up to John Foster and cast fear aside. Not only was she a failure as a relative and non-existent as a sweetheart or friend, but she was not even of any importance as a patient. Dr. Trent had forgotten her very presence in his excitement over whatever message had come by the phone. She had gained nothing by ignoring Uncle James and flying in the face of family tradition. For a moment she was afraid she was going to cry. It was all so ridiculous. Then she heard Dr. Trent's housekeeper coming down the stairs. Valancy rose and went to the office door. "The doctor forgot all about me," she said with a twisted smile. "Well, that's too bad," said Mrs. Patterson sympathetically. "But it wasn't much wonder, poor man. That was telegram they phoned over from the port. Her son has been terribly injured in an auto accident in Montreal. The doctor had just 10 minutes to catch the train. I don't know what he'll do if anything happens to Ned. He's just bound up in the boy. You'll have to come again, Miss Stirling. I hope it's nothing serious." Oh no, nothing serious," agreed Valancy. She felt a little less humiliated. It was no wonder poor Dr. Trent had forgotten her at such a moment. Nevertheless, she felt very flat and discouraged as she went down the street. Valancy went home by the shortcut of Lover's Lane. She did not often go through Lover's Lane, but it was getting near supper time and it would never do to be late. Lover's Lane wound back of the village under great elms and maples and deserved its name. It was hard to go there at any time and not find some canoodling couple, or young girls in pairs, arms entwined, earnestly talking over their little secrets. Valancy didn't know which made her feel more self-conscious and uncomfortable. This evening she encountered both. She met Connie Hale and Kate Bailey in new pink organdy dresses with flowers stuck coquettishly in their glossy bare hair. Valancy had never had a pink dress or worn flowers in her hair. Then she passed a young couple she didn't know, dandering along, oblivious to everything but themselves. The young man's arm was around the girl's waist quite shamelessly. Valancy had never walked with a man's arm around her. She felt that she ought to be shocked. They might leave that sort of thing for the screening twilight at least. But she wasn't shocked. In another flash of desperate, stark honesty, she owned to herself that she was nearly envious. When she passed them, she felt quite sure they were laughing at her, laughing at her, pitying her. There's that queer little old maid, Valancy Stirling. They say she's never had a beau in her whole life. Valancy fairly ran to get out of Lover's Lane. Never had she felt so utterly colorless and skinny and insignificant. Just where Lover's Lane debouched on the street, an old car was parked. Valancy knew that car very well, by sound at least, and everybody in Deerwood knew it. This was before the phrase Tin Lizzie had come into circulation, in Deerwood at least. But if it had been known, this was the tinniest of Lizzies, though it was not a Ford but an old grey Slauson. Nothing more battered and disreputable could be imagined. It was Barney Snaith's car, and Barney himself was just scrambling up from under it, in overalls plastered with mud. Valancy gave him a swift, furtive look as she hurried by. This was only the second time she had ever seen the notorious Barney Snaith, though she had heard enough about him in the 5 years that he had been living up back in Muskoka. The first time had been nearly a year ago on the Muskoka road. He had been crawling out from under his car then too, and he had given her a cheerful grin as she went by. And he had given her wait, where was I? I got lost. Oh my goodness. And he had given her a cheerful grin as he went by, a little whimsical grin that gave him the look of an amused gnome. He didn't look bad. She didn't believe he was bad, in spite of the wild yarns that were always being told of him. Of course, he went tearing in that terrible old grey Slauson through Deerwood at hours when all decent people were in bed, often with old roaring Abel, who made the night hideous with his howls. Both of them dead drunk, my dear, and everyone knew that he was an escaped convict and a defaulting bank clerk and a murderer in hiding and an infidel and an illegitimate son of old Roaring Abel Gay and the father of Roaring Abel's illegitimate grandchild and a counterfeiter and a forger and a few other awful things. But Valancy still didn't quite believe he was bad. Nobody with a smile like that could be bad, no matter what he had done. It was that night that the Prince of the Blue Castle changed from a being of grim jaw and hair with a dash of premature grey, to a rakish individual with overlong tawny hair dashed with red, dark brown eyes and ears that stuck out just enough to give him an alert look, but not enough to be caught flying jibs. But he still remained something a little grim about the jaw. But he still retained something a little grim about the jaw. Barney Snaith looked even more disreputable than usual just now. It was very evident that he hadn't shaved for days, and his hands and arms, bare to the shoulders, were black with grease. But he was whistling gleefully to himself, and he seemed so happy that Valancy envied him. She envied him his light-heartedness and his irresponsibility and his mysterious little cabin up on an island in Lake Mistawis, even his rackety old grey Slauson. Neither he nor his car had to be respectable and live up to traditions. When he rattled past her a few minutes later, bareheaded, leaning back in his Lizzie at a raffish angle, his longish hair blowing in the wind, a villainous-looking old black pipe in his mouth. She envied him again. Men had the best of it, no doubt about that. This outlaw was happy, whatever he was or wasn't. She, Valancy Stirling, respectable, well-behaved to the last degree, was unhappy and had always been unhappy. So, there you were. Valancy was just in time for supper. Sorry, guys. I'm reading the. He. I know. I wanted to laugh so hard when I was reading all the list of other things he had done. Arcady's like, yeah, he has done everything bad that can be done. Right? Like, I don't get it. Like, he's supposed to be Abel Gray's illegitimate son, but also the father of the illegitimate grandchild. Like, dudes, make up your mind. So everything that could be bad, that's him. Let's see, where was I? Rafficial, da 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 da. So there you were. Oh yes, Plowman, but he can smile. He can smile. So about a year ago, you know how Valancy used to have like these, like the men, her pretend lovers in her blue castle, they would change. Like first it was a blonde guy when she was like a teenager, then like somebody with like dark hair, and then somebody with like red hair, and somebody so like about a year ago, the first time she ever saw Barney, the dream guy in her blue castle changed from being like somebody with, you know, like who's turning a little gray, turned into somebody that looks a little bit like Barney. I'm like, yo, Valancy, your subconscious is telling you something. I don't know. But I think that's the power of a smile. Because, yeah, you guys, he can smile. Oh, man. So, continuing on. Valancy was just in time for supper. The sun had clouded over, and a dismal, drizzling rain was falling again. Cousin Stickles had the neuralgia. Valancy had to do the family darning, and there was no time for magic of wings. Can't the darning wait till tomorrow? She pleaded. Tomorrow will bring its own duties, said Mrs. Frederick inexorably. Valancy darned all the evening and listened to Mrs. Frederick and Cousin Stickles talking the eternal niggling gossip of the clan, as they knitted drearily at interminable black stockings. They discussed second cousin Lillian's approaching wedding in all its bearings. On the whole, they approved. Second cousin Lillian was doing well for herself. Though she hasn't hurried, said Cousin Stickles. She must be 25. There have not, fortunately, been many old maids in our connection, said Mrs. Frederick bitterly. Valancy flinched. She had run the darning needle into her finger. Third cousin Aaron Gray had been scratched by a cat and had blood poisoning in his finger. Cats are most dangerous animals, said Mrs. Frederick. I would never have a cat about the house. She glared significantly at Valancy through her terrible glasses. Once, 5 years ago, Valancy had asked if she might have a cat. She had never referred to it since, but Mrs. Frederick still suspected her of harboring the unlawful desire in her heart of hearts. Once Valancy sneezed. Now, in the Stirling Code, it is very bad form to sneeze in public. You can always repress a sneeze by pressing your finger on your upper lip, said Mrs. Frederick rebukingly. 9:30, and so, as Mr. Pepys would say, to bed. But first Cousin Stickles' neuralgic back must be rubbed with Redfern's liniment. Valancy did that. Valancy always had to do it. She hated the smell of Redfern's liniment. She hated the smug, beaming, portly, bewhiskered, bespectable picture of Dr. Redfern on the bottle. Her fingers smelled of the horrible stuff after she got into bed, in spite of all the scrubbing she gave them. Valancy's day of destiny had come and gone. She ended it as she had begun it, in tears. End of chapter. Oh, I did the 3 chapters I had in mind. Should I do another one? Let me think about it. My throat feels okay, and we've done less than an hour. See, I told you these chapters are very short. Sometimes they get long though. All right. So I see some other comments I didn't quite get to earlier. Oh, Red Tempest, are you back with us? Welcome back. It says meeting ended. What's happening? Basically, Valancy decided that she was going. Well, she went to see Dr. Trent. Unfortunately, he didn't tell her anything, didn't help her at all because there was an emergency that came up and he left her basically. So she's like, dang it. Her day for it being her birthday was pretty unremarkable and actually really sad. She started the day off crying, she ended the day off crying, but she doesn't know that this day was her day of destiny. And so after this, we'll see what happens. I don't know, when you say like her day of destiny had come and gone, that means that something pretty big is happening or had happened or will happen. We'll see. She needs a break, honestly. This girl cannot catch a break. She cannot. Like, oh my gosh, imagine that life. I can see why she's so downtrodden and why she needs to escape into Blue Castle. Call it silly, call it childish. This girl needs a Blue Castle just to keep sane in this life. Oh, Plamen says, in my city, we have a similar place, a lover's bridge. Aw. Where everybody goes to take pictures and walk and do the things. There are some bridges where people put like, locks. You put a lock and it'll mean that your love will be forever or something like that. But yeah, like when I read this and I read the part about the lover's lane, I think like, have you guys seen how in Japan they have like this like long road of like wisteria? Just like, I don't know, that's what I think in my head. Or the closest to it would be like a long road of blooming jacaranda trees, like the purple trees that just bloom in May. So pretty, so dreamy. That would look like a lover's lane. I don't know. But they didn't say it was particularly pretty. It was just a lane that people walk through. Yeah, it must be somewhat pretty. Okay, so Plamen, Valancy is 29. She just turned 29. So 4 years ago, that was when she was 25, she wanted to have a cat. Oh yes, Plamen says, yes, they put padlocks. Yes, that one. I think I've seen, there used to be one in France, but I think they took it down or they cut them all up. That's so sad. What happened to my love? Yeah, they removed them all. That was not nice. I feel, yeah, I would feel sad. Let's see, what are other places where you can do romantic things? My sister, she went out on a date. They went to Mexico, drove down to Mexico, I don't know what. And there's like a place that's like a volcanic, I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in, basically people write their names using stones. So, my sister's boyfriend, he was smashing the stones to write their names with stones. I was like, well, that's okay, I guess. I mean, I would think like carving your name on initials would be more permanent. But I tried it and I went back 10 years later and the tree was gone. So yeah, when I did the whole let's carve our names into a tree, I never thought that it would be bad for the tree. We just carved my initials there, carved the initials there. And yeah, like 10 years later, I'm like, I'm gonna go back to see the tree. And yeah, the tree was gone. So I felt kind of bummed out. But you know what? That relationship nothing happened afterwards. Like, of course, you outgrow people, so I guess that's just a whole bunch of phooey. Let's see. Okay, so Arcady says the French was because it was becoming too heavy for the bridge. Whoa, heavy for the bridge, not just for the railing, but for the bridge. Wowzers, okay. Yeah, since people are like, Paris is the city of love, I bet they went overboard. I bet you that once they removed that, they returned and people have started doing it again. On the bridge here, the city removes the padlocks once a month. Okay, well, at least people know what to expect, that they're gonna be removed. Setting what's it called? Setting their expectations so that they know that, yeah, you'll be able to have it here for a month, but we're gonna take it off. I think there was a place, or maybe I dreamed it up, but they actually put them on some kind of display, the locks, because some of these locks are really pretty. Like they're not just any old padlocks. They can be like customized or pretty, or they have like little rhinestones or whatnot, you know. People want to make it special, so it would be a shame if they would just throw them away. They should at least do like a little museum or something lame like that. I don't know. What's another opportunity to make some money out of, you know, tourists that have nothing else to do but spend their money? Might as well set up a little lame ass museum that has like a display of the best stuff. I don't know. Here I am, I'm looking for opportunities to make a profit. Excuse me, I'm a business owner. That's just my business owner mind, doing business owner things. Gotta make that money. Easy ways to make money. Set up a gallery of stuff you didn't make, of stuff you didn't buy, other people's stuff. Everybody wins. All right. Oh, Red Tempest made a meme in the Discord. Oh, I have to go check it out. All right, so how are you guys doing? Should we do another one? I think I'm gonna do another chapter. Let me just fetch this meme. I am super curious to see the meme. Man, Discord is downloading updates. I will then check it out later. Because when Discord does the updates thing, it's so annoying. It takes... Oh, it's up. Okay. Let me just change here. Look for the thing. Let's see. Come on, Discord. Oh. Okay, that's hilarious. I have to share it. Hold on a sec. So thank you, Red Tempest. You are in top 4, my man. Let me just share it here. Let's see. Here we go. There you go. This was made just now by Red Tempest, our favorite memer here on my Discord server. Making those things so quickly, and you have even cut up Valancy's head so you can put it in various things, various memes. You're doing so good at this. Thank you for the meme. Couldn't find a good picture of Valancy. So yeah, the books are kind of like, did I show you guys the book covers? Yeah, the book covers, they're kind of like low res. I think I shared it with you guys. Here's another one of Valancy, by the way. This one is also Valancy. I think it's more accurate as to what ends up happening in the more accurate to the book. Her description, like they say she has like almond-shaped eyes. They call it Oriental, which I know we don't use that word nowadays anymore. But yeah, this is definitely a book that you can tell it's from back in the day, because they use some terms that you wouldn't use, and of course they talk about things that back then were shocking. You know, just the fact that she dared to mention that about illegitimate children, that was something you did not write in children's books at all. So this is Ellen Montgomery going wild herself. She was always writing children's books. They were very lovely books, but they were thematically, they didn't go to these kind of topics. I think the most thematic, it's also a children's book, but it's not. It's another series. It's not the Anne of Green Gables series, which is like super sweet, love it. But the Emily books, dudes, I loved Anne of Green Gables, but Emily of New Moon, oh my god, that book gripped me by the heart and did not let go. It stayed with me forever. Like, there's some books that just stayed with me just because of the sheer passion and tragedy and angst and drama and the unrequited love. Oh my goodness, requited love, whatever. I don't know. It's just so much stuff going on in that book. It's almost, I would say it's almost a adult book, like a YA book, less a children's book, but not quite adult, though I think it's getting frightfully close to being something like an adult book. But it was still meant for children, so of course she toned it down. But I could feel that it was a self-insert kind of book. Ella Montgomery's life was really interesting. It's worth looking into it. So yeah, if you're able to, if after we finish the Blue Castle, you're interested in reading something else from her. If you have children, definitely read with your children Anne of Green Gables. If you like something a little bit more, I don't know, something you can bite into, then definitely the Emily books, which start off as like a children's books, but they, like, as she grows, the tone changes to match her age and match all the things that happen to her. Anyway, I digress. Let us continue reading The Blue Castle. Let's do another chapter. Let's see. I wonder where it's gonna end. Let's do this. This is the next day after her birthday. Let me just take a little sip of water. Okay. There was a rose bush on the little Stirling lawn, growing beside the gate. It was called Doss's rose bush. Cousin Georgiana had given it to Valancy 5 years ago, and Valancy had planted it joyfully. She loved roses, but, of course, the rose bush never bloomed. That was her luck. Valancy did everything she could think of and took the advice of everybody in the clan. But still, the rose bush would not bloom. It throve and grew luxuriantly with great leafy branches untouched of rust or spider. But not even a bud had ever appeared on it. Valancy, looking at it 2 days after her birthday. Oh, correction, 2 days after her birthday. Valancy, looking at it 2 days after her birthday, was filled with a sudden, overwhelming hatred for it. The thing wouldn't bloom? Very well. Then she would cut it down. She marched to the tool room in the barn for her garden knife, and she went at the rose bush viciously. A few minutes later, horrified Mrs. Frederick came out to the veranda and beheld her daughter slashing insanely among the rose bush boughs. Half of them were already strewn on the walk. The bush looked sadly dismantled. "Doss, what on earth are you doing? Have you gone crazy?" "No," said Valancy. She meant to say it defiantly, but habit was too strong for her. She said it deprecatingly. Let me go back to the top. "No," said Valancy. She meant to say it defiantly, but habit was too strong for her. She said it deprecatingly. I just made up my mind to cut this bush down. It is no good. It never blooms, never will bloom." "That is no reason for destroying it," said Mrs. Frederick Stirling. "It was a beautiful bush, and quite ornamental. You have made a sorry-looking thing of it." "Rose trees should bloom," said Valancy a little obstinately. "Don't argue with me, Doss. Clear up that mess and leave the bush alone. I don't know what Georgiana will say when she sees how you have hacked it to pieces. Really, I'm surprised at you. And to do it without consulting me." "The bush is mine." "What's that? What did you say, Doss?" "I only said the bush was mine," repeated Valancy humbly. Mrs. Frederick, oh, she's supposed to say it humbly. Okay, fine, humbly. "I only said the bush was mine," repeated Valancy humbly. Mrs. Frederick turned without a word and marched back into the house. The mischief was done now. Valancy knew she had offended her mother deeply and would not be spoken to or noticed in any way for 2 or 3 days. Cousin Stickles would see to Valancy's bringing up, but Mrs. Frederick would preserve the stony silence of outraged majesty. Valancy sighed and put away her garden knife, hanging it precisely on its precise nail in the tool shop. She cleared away the severed branches and swept up the leaves. Her lips twitched as she looked at the straggling bush. It had an odd resemblance to its shaken, scrawny donor, little cousin Georgiana herself. I certainly have made an awful-looking thing of it, thought Valancy. But she did not feel repentant, only sorry she had offended her mother. Things would be so uncomfortable until she was forgiven. Mrs. Frederick was one of those women who can make their anger felt all over a house. Walls and doors are no protection from it. You'd better go uptown and get the mail, said Cousin Stickles when Valancy went in. I can't go. I feel all sort of peaky and piney this spring. I want you to stop at the drugstore and get me a bottle of Redfern's blood bitters. There's nothing like Redfern's bitters for building a body up. Cousin James says purple pills are the best, but I know better. My poor dear husband took Redfern's bitter right up until the day he died. Don't let him charge you more than 90 cents. I can get it for that at the port. And what have you been saying to your poor mother? Do you ever stop to think, Dawes, that you can only have one mother? One is enough for me, thought Valancy undutifully as she went uptown. She got Cousin Stickles' bottle of bitters, and she went to the post office and asked for her mail at the general delivery. Her mother did not have a box. They got too little mail to bother with it. Valancy did not expect any mail except the Christian Times, which was the only paper they took. They hardly ever got any letters, but Valancy rather liked to stand in the office and watch Mr. Carew, the gray-bearded Santa Clausy old clerk, handing out letters to the lucky people who did get them. He did it with such a detached, impersonal, Jove-like air, as if it did not matter in the least to him what supernal joys or shattering horrors might be in those letters for the people to whom they were addressed. Letters had a fascination for Valancy, perhaps because she seldom got any. And her Blue Castle exciting epistles, bound with silk and sealed with crimson, were always being brought to her by pages in livery. Livery or livery? Have to look that up. In livery of gold and blue. But in real life, her only letters were occasional perfunctory notes from relatives or an advertising circular. Consequently, she was immensely surprised when Dr. Carew, oh my gosh, I called him Doctor. Mr. Carew. Sorry. She was immensely surprised when Mr. Carew, looking even more Jovian than usual, poked the letter out to her. Yes, it was addressed to her plainly in a fierce black hand. Miss Valancy Stirling, Elm Street, Deerwood. The postmark was Montreal. Valancy picked it up with a little quickening of her breath. Montreal! It must be from Dr. Trent. He had remembered her after all. Valancy met Uncle Benjamin coming in as she was going out, and was glad the letter was safely in her bag. "What," said Uncle Benjamin, "is the difference between a donkey and a postage stamp?" "I don't know. What?" answered Valancy dutifully. "One you lick with a stick, and the other you stick with a lick." Oh gosh, it's so lame. That's so lame. Oh my gosh. He's so stupid. Uncle Benjamin passed in, tremendously pleased with himself. Cousin Stickles pounced on the times when Valancy got home, but it did not occur to her to ask if there were any letters. Mrs. Frederick would have asked it, but Mrs. Frederick's lips at present were sealed. Valancy was glad of this. If her mother had asked if there were any letters, Valancy would have had to admit there was. Then she would have had to let her mother and Cousin Stickles read the letter, and all would be discovered. Her heart acted strangely on the way upstairs, and she sat down by her window for a few minutes before opening her letter. She felt very guilty and deceitful. She had never before kept a letter secret from her mother. Every letter she had ever written or received had been read by Mrs. Frederick. That had never mattered. Valancy had never had anything to hide. But this did matter. She could not have anyone see this letter, for her fingers trembled with the consciousness of wickedness and unfilial conduct as she opened it. Trembled a little too, perhaps, with apprehension. She felt quite sure there was nothing seriously wrong with her heart, but one never knew. Dr. Trent's letter was like himself, blunt, abrupt, concise, wasting no words. Dr. Trent never beat about the bush. Dear Miss Stirling, and then a page of black, positive writing. Valancy seemed to read it at a glance. She dropped it on her lap, her face ghost white. Dr. Trent told her she had a very dangerous and fatal form of heart disease, angina pectoris, evidently complicated with an aneurysm, whatever that was, and in the last stages. He said, without mincing matters, that nothing could be done for her. If she took great care of herself, she might live a year, but she might also die at any moment. Dr. Trent never troubled himself about euphemisms. She must be careful to avoid all excitement and all severe muscular efforts. She must eat and drink moderately. She must never run. She must go upstairs and uphill with great care. Any sudden jolt or shock might be fatal. She was to get the prescription he enclosed, filled, and carry it with her always, taking a dose whenever her attacks came on, and he was hers truly, H.B. Trent. Valancy sat for a long while by her window. Outside was a world drowned in the light of a spring afternoon, skies entrancingly blue, winds perfumed and free, lovely soft blue hazes at the end of every street. Over at the railway station, a group of young girls was waiting for a train. She heard their gay laughter as they chattered and joked. Chattered? Yeah. For somebody who uses this word every single time, chattering. It's so strange to see it anyway. She heard their gay laughter as they chattered and joked. The train roared and roared out again, but none of these things had any reality. Nothing had any reality except for the fact that she had only another year to live. When she was tired of sitting at the window, she went over and lay down on her bed, staring at the cracked, discolored ceiling. The curious numbness that follows on a staggering blow possessed her. She did not feel anything except the boundless surprise and incredulity, behind which was the conviction that Dr. Trent knew his business, and that she, Valancy Stirling, who had never lived, was about to die. When the gong rang for supper, Valancy got up and went downstairs mechanically, from force of habit. She wondered why she had been let alone She wondered that she had been let alone for so long. But of course her mother would not pay attention to her just now. Valancy was thankful for this. She thought the quarrel over the rosebush had been really, as Mrs. Frederick herself might have said, providential. She could not eat anything, but both Mrs. Frederick and Cousin Stickles thought this was because she was deservedly unhappy over her mother's attitude, and her lack of appetite was not commented on. Valancy forced herself to swallow a cup of tea, and then sat and watched the others eat, with an odd feeling that years had passed since she had sat with them at the dinner table. She found herself smiling inwardly to think what a commotion she could make if she chose. Let her merely tell them let her merely tell them what was in Dr. Trent's letter, and there would be as much fuss made as if, Valancy thought bitterly, they really cared two straws about her. Dr. Trent's housekeeper got word from him today, said Cousin Stickles, so suddenly that Valancy jumped guiltily. Was there anything in thought waves? Mrs. Judd was talking to her uptown. They think his son will recover, but Dr. Trent wrote
that if he did, he was going to take him abroad as soon as he was able to travel, and wouldn't be back here for a year at least.
That will not matter much to us, said Mrs. Frederick majestically. He is not our doctor. I would not. Here she looked, or seemed to look accusingly right through Valancy. I would not have him doctor a sick cat. Oh, I think I read it wrong. By the way, the irony that she would not have... She's bringing up the cat. Oh my gosh. Poor Valancy. I would not, here she looked, or seemed to look accusingly right through Valancy, have him to doctor a sick cat.
May I go upstairs and lie down? Said Valancy faintly. I have a headache.
What's giving you a headache? Asked Cousin Stickles, since Mrs. Frederick would not. The question had to be asked. Valancy could not be allowed to have headaches without interference.
You ain't in the habit of having headaches. I hope you're not taking the mumps. Here, try a spoonful of vinegar.
Piffle, said Valancy rudely, getting up from the table. She did not care just then if she were rude. She had had to be polite all her life. If it had been possible for Cousin Stickles to turn pale, she would have. As it was not, she turned yellower.
Are you sure you ain't feverish, Doss? You sound like it. You go and get right into bed, said Cousin Stickles, thoroughly alarmed, and I'll come up and rub your forehead and the back of your neck with red fern's liniment.
Valancy had reached the door, but she turned. I won't be rubbed with red fern's liniment, she said. Cousin Stickles stared and gasped.
What do you mean?
I said I wouldn't be rubbed with red fern's liniment, repeated Valancy. Horrid, sticky stuff, and it has the vilest smell of any liniment I ever saw. It's no good. I want to be left alone, that's all. Valancy went out, leaving Cousin Stickles aghast.
She's feverish. She must be feverish,
ejaculated Cousin Stickles. Mrs. Frederick went on eating her supper. It did not matter whether Valancy was or was not feverish. Valancy had been guilty of impertinence to her. End of chapter. All right, I think Cousin Stickles' reading did me in. Yeah, that was. I have to work on that. That one's kind of like a little tough because she's supposed to be like an older woman, but I don't see her as a Riarda type. Like I have a Riarda voice, which is more like vocal fry, but this one seems to me more like a wheezy kind of like sickleish kind of voice. Anyway, yeah, so that was chapters 3, 4, 5. No, that was chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. Whoa, that was 4 chapters, you guys. Chapter 8 is a very long one, so I'm just going to stop right here. Chapter 8 is a little longer than chapter 7, so I'm going to stop right here for today. That way people can catch up. Chapter 8 is a very important chapter. So, yeah. Yes. So what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I know I have people in the chat. I see Arcady was the shock thing when we learned what was the matter with Valancy. Turns out the little chest pain that she was having, nothing the matter with her. It's surely nothing serious. Turns out to be quite serious indeed. Remember that Dr. Trent is not just some backwoods doctor. He actually is a heart specialist, so he knows his stuff. Now, personally, if I got something so dire, I would go and get a second and third opinion. But Valancy being Valancy, I doubt she's gonna be able to get a second opinion, especially since there's absolutely nothing secret in that part of town. And she has to deal with her family. I think that's I mean, and he is also a specialist, so what are you gonna do, you know? Realistically, she can't get a second opinion. But we'll see. I mean, she described her pains as like something that came at night. So I don't know if that's something that has to do with her condition, but also she has to be really careful. It says going upstairs, going downstairs, you have to be very careful. You could drop dead at any moment. The maximum you have is 1 year. So I don't know, what would you guys do if you knew that you only have 1 year at most? One of the things that was very interesting to me was the moment she got the letter and she sat by her window and she looked out. That was the exact moment when she started to realize that the outside is beautiful. The world has some appeal. Like the last time she had looked at her window, like everything was gloomy, dreary. There were a bunch of hobos in this train station. But now as she looked out, she saw the clear blue sky. You know, it's spring. Instead of hobos at the station, there were like some girls, being friendly and just living their life, laughing and stuff. And she's like, yo, like, I know I had like hated my life, but now that I'm looking at it, like, I don't know. Even if you like feel like you hate your life, I'm sure like the moment you learn that you are going to die, that totally flips the way you think. That's what I'm thinking. Oh yes, it's her mother worse than Veronica, because Arcady Durrell says she is the worst parent indeed. Yeah, Mrs. Frederick is a woman of her time, very traditional, but of course it also goes for temperament. She's very unflexible, very, yeah, just that kind of like is not open to like being new ideas, new concepts, just very close-minded, very unflexible. So that's pretty bad. I would hate to be a child to somebody like that. Now, Red Tempest says, is her mother worse than Veronica? Well, her mother probably hasn't poisoned anybody. So we do have to give that to Mrs. Frederick. She hasn't tried to poison anybody. I mean, if that's if that's the bar that needs to be cleared, it's a pretty low bar, but okay. No, unfortunately, fortunately, she does not have the devouring. She only has a heart condition. Yeah, so Blockstrut says, in that time and area, getting a second and third opinion seems to be very complicated. Exactly, because, again, she lives in a little town, and there's maybe 2 doctors. There's Dr. some other one, the one that her family goes to, who's actually related to her family. He married somebody from their clan. And then there's Dr. Trent. So if you want a second opinion from Dr. Trent, you have to go to the other doctor, who's a general practitioner, who's gonna blab it all to your family and connection. You don't want that. The other alternative is go to Port Lawrence, which is a city, the closest city, maybe like an hour or something away, an hour, half an hour. I don't know how far Port Lawrence is from Deerwood. That's a city, but again, to get there, you would need to have a car, and she does not have a car. She can't go walking all the way over there. So there's a lot in there. Also, there's the money situation. Yeah, it was tough in this day and age. So Arcady Durrell says, I would take my money and visit places I want to see, and if and food I wanted to try. Yeah, I would definitely do that too. So yeah, if you definitely had a year to live, you kind of start thinking about like things I want to do before, like you start checking things from your bucket list. Yeah, I would do the same. I would just make sure that all my affairs are in order, and probably I would vanish. Kind of like cats, when they go die, they go to like die somewhere else, like where they won't see them or something like that. That's kind of how I think I would do it. I would just not want people to like see me suffering or whatever. I would just want to go in my sleep and but make sure to leave everything so that my family doesn't have to worry about, you know, the funeral and all those things. Just like, here's my last will, here's the things, and it's all paid for and whatnot. So I don't want to be a bother to people after I'm dead. Yeah, I don't know. The Crusher says, if I only had 1 year to live, I would basically speedrun through life, fall in love, fall out of love, a little bit of everything, no more inhibitions. It's my life. I want to live it my way. Oh, Crusher, that is the way to do it. Yes. Yes. Make sure that you have lived everything, lived all the experiences you can pack into your life, for real. Both the good and the bad. They're all part of human existence. Yeah, I get it. So, what do you guys think Valancy's gonna do? Now, no spoilers if you have, for some reason, read ahead. I mean, there's a room for a lot of things she could do in this with her situation. We'll see what it is. So, you guys, I'm gonna try to schedule another live read. Maybe not sometime this week. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday, one of these weeks, one of these days. So check it out. Actually, no, not tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm going to do a read along with the people over on Discord. So that'll be a bookworm read along. And then I have to do the chit chat for pre-pub. So tomorrow's going to be a little bit busy for me. So probably Thursday. So be on the lookout. Then we'll just do read alongs Wednesday and Thursday. How's that? I'm going to try to make this consistent. So it's Thursday and Wednesday. I mean, Thursday and Wednesday. Monday and what is it? Monday and Thursday read alongs here. Or Frank from Always Sunny says, just throw me in the trash. No, we're not quite at that point, but yeah, some people would be like, they would just do like the assisted, what is it? The assisted dying situation. I wouldn't go that far, because it's not like she's in serious pain, like she can't, like she's hooked up to machines or whatever. She can still have experiences. So it's in her hands to see what experiences you can do. Arcady Dura also says the Crusher option. Yes, the same thing. And Red Tempest says she will go berserk on her mother. Well, honestly, her mother deserves it. I mean, I'm not spoiling anything. But you guys, who do you think she's gonna push back against? That's her mother's the first person that comes to mind. She has been the oppressing thumb that has kept her down for some time. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I wouldn't really care. I mean, I would care. I would be upset. But I wouldn't mind Mrs. Frederick so much if she had actually loved her daughter and like done like trying to do things for her daughter's good. But no, she just like squishes her down, like stamps out, like killed her spirit just because she could, and just overbearing, all these terrible, awful things to her poor daughter. So yeah, Valancy needs justice. Valancy needs a break. Okay. I don't want to spoil anymore, so do join me on Thursday. Yes, I will do a read along on Thursday. I'll try to do it so it's on a different hour so that Europe Gang can join in. What time is it right now in Europe? Oh, right now right now is time for Europe Gang that they can join in. Oh, all right. So maybe this hour, maybe in the afternoon. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, darlings. I think that's the end for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I had a bunch of fun reading this, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will see you then on the next read along. Remember to subscribe to this channel if you aren't. I will do other books after I do the Blue Castle. I'm checking out some books that we can do here. But yeah, thank you for joining today, and I will then see you later. Till then, Be sure to memorize all of Uncle Benjamin's jokes and use them. Use them on your friends and family and see what kind of aghast face they're so stupid, those jokes. Oh my gosh. All right, everybody, take care. Bye.